Well, let's look at some of the events leading up to today and what we can look forward to in Mangaung as the ANC President is set to outline the plans for 2023. Free State Chapter Strategic Dialogue Group member Professor Brian Nakedi tells us more. Professor, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on our platform this morning. I want to start with the second leg of the ANC's national conference, which concluded earlier this week on the eve of that January 8th statement. The fact that, constitutional amendments were unable to be passed because, of a lack of quorum. What should South Africans be reading into that particular development?
So we realized that the conference for the first time has had two legs or two phases from Nasrec to Mangaung. And as a result, there were a lot of issues involving logistics and so on. However, what is important is that there's been a clear expression from the policy conference in terms of all policy matters involving organizational renewal and so on, to a point where there was also adopted resolutions regarding how the reshaping of the branch structures should take place. For an example, in terms of the one member, one vote. Unfortunately, due to the technicalities related to the Constitution, such could not be formally adopted, and it has left a very huge gap in terms of how we go forward.
Now, the issue here being the fact that delegates, their attendance dwindled during this hybrid session of the conference. What do you make of that? Because, the election of the ANC's top 7 officials dominated that first leg of the conference. Adopting these policy resolutions had to be, if not of even more importance to delegates, to see the kind of changes within the African National Congress that are needed to move the organization forward. But the fact that attendance dwindled to just around 2,100 delegates from the 4,000 expected, or at least the 4,000 that we saw in December, what should we make of that?
We should actually appreciate that indeed these are the challenges that we have identified in terms of the need to renew and modernize the ANC. We have stated that clearly as the SDG, that for the ANC to be able to become effective and reconnect with its constituencies, there is a dire need to actually attend to these issues pertaining to membership, and that flows into issues of delegates and so on. So it is a challenge that is historical, is contextual, and we are hoping that the NEC, the new NEC, will immediately focus on such so that we could be able to address all issues relevant in terms of organizational renewal. Because one good and positive fact is that they have been mandated by conference to address such. And secondly, the renewal recommendations from the policy conference have been adopted. So there is that kind of, if you like, interventionist approach with regard to the renewal, issues that will again help to address the gaps created by the absence of delegates.
Well, last night, Party President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing those in attendance at the gala dinner, reiterating this issue of organizational renewal, referring to it as an irreversible moment in the party's history, irrevocable were the words that he also used. Why the need to sort of hamper down on this issue around organizational renewal when it's a message that we've been hearing for a very long time? Why hasn't it seeped in and cemented itself within the ANC's core?
Precisely because, as we know, the ANC has been fleeced with different kind of membership that is not comparable to the ANC that was waging the anti-apartheid struggle, and for reasons that we all are averse to in terms of the personal interest, for self-interest pertaining to economic empowerment and so on. Now, that is not an easy, if you like, issue. It's a big issue because you're fighting with people who have their own self-interest against those of the people on the ground, and therefore affecting the objectives of the movement in the form of the ANC. So yes, it will always be, said loudly that a renewal needs to happen in terms of the organizational imperatives, and hence all of us, led by the president of the ANC, including the chairperson of the SDG, are continuing to harp on this issue of organizational renewal.
The hope, Professor, I think, coming out of this conference and some of the policies that were ideally supposed to be adopted at this particular conference was to address these internal issues within the organization, fix what's happening on the inside so that the ANC can get to the business of fixing what's happening in South Africa and its role as government in South Africa. But of course, that not being successful heading into this January 8th statement, where it is supposed to set out its organizational program and essentially bring South Africans into its confidence. How is that going to work out, given the outcomes of conference and the work, the sheer mammoth task that lies ahead for the party as it deals with declining electoral support going into 2024?
We have realized that the ANC, to a large extent, has been affected by various issues, both internally and externally. And to this extent, what has happened now, there is a new mandate delegated to the new NEC, and that structure is now seized with the mandate to ensure, one, that organizationally, starting at a branch level, the ANC focuses on issues pertaining to policy issues, ideological training, political education, and governance, so that that will translate into the state institutions in terms of strengthening them, so that we can go to clinics and not wait for too long. We can go to the schools and see that they are clean schools, and the school governing bodies are working. We must look into the issues of the ward committees and so forth. So this NEC is seized with that mandate, and it is up to this NEC to ensure that the ANC moves forward in terms of the expectations that are actually within the society, because ANC is a big movement, and it really has to come to the party and reconcile with its own constituencies, so that this NEC is seen to have really delivered on its mandate.
Thanks, Professor. We'll leave it there for now. That's Free State Chapter Strategic Dialogue Group member, Professor Brian Nakedi.